Good morning and thank you for joining us. Well, we're not taking turns, no. I mean, my partner. Well, I wasn't here last week. It's not that he's not coming this week. He must be stuck in traffic somewhere. My name is Alero Edu and welcome to Sunrise. What do I say? I guess the most important piece of news in the course of the week was what broke on Thursday afternoon regarding Bielsa. Well, we'll be talking about that in the body of the program, but these judgments that come so suddenly and just destabilize everybody, that was certainly one of them. Well, protestations here and there regarding the Okada and Keke ban happening in Lagos. But my take on this is it happened in some other states and we didn't hear a peep out of anybody. So, what's happening in Lagos State? Bonfires, protestations. It's like Lagos is, well, you know what the president said when he was sworn in? I belong to everybody and I belong to nobody. Well, that's the feeling I'm getting about Lagos State. Lagos State belongs to everybody and belongs to nobody. So everybody can do exactly as they please in Lagos. I'm sure Lagos State is not happy to hear that. But that is the reading that people are giving to this situation that is going on right now. But have you noticed that Lagos looks calmer and cleaner? I'm sure they're throwing barbs at me right now, all those Okada riders. But coming here this morning, it was dark when I left home, and there were two Okada riders facing me on either side of the road. Headlights on. And I was a bit confused. Is this a big vehicle? Those were the headlamps, and I had to stop until I could understand what was going on. So, early in the morning, they are still on the roads. At night, they are still on the roads. So, Lagos State, you've got your work cut out. These people are intent on breaking the law at all cost. Yesterday was Valentine's Day, but we always say on this program, don't just leave love until the 14th of February. What's wrong with loving every day of the year? And guess what? In the course of today's program, we are going to tell you the benefits of having a good relationship, the benefits of loving someone, and the benefits of being loved. I like that. So you do well to get into some kind of relationship, and you will see that even your health will benefit from it. So, happy Valentine's Day would be in order, I suppose, even though it was yesterday. But because of the traffic situation in Lagos, traffic is everywhere these days. I'm sure some people have left the celebrations until today. So, have a good Valentine outing. I'm sure cakes were flowing yesterday, roses were flying all over the place. So were chocolates, lunch dates, dinner dates. Take it all in your stride and enjoy it all. But don't restrict it to February 14th. Love every day. And I hope that you will be loved every day as well. Now, what is on our menu for today? We're going to focus on electoral reforms. That's not surprising, of course, in light of Imo State and 2 days ago, Bielsa. Then, of course, we shall go to the classroom, as we have been doing in the last 2 to 3 weeks. And today we shall be focusing on the coat of arms of Nigeria and the Nigerian flag. Do you know what the green, white, green of our flag stands for? Well, you'll learn all that in the course of today's program. Then we have the Junior Achievement Nigeria. They'll be coming to tell us what they're up to. And then, like I was saying earlier, healthy living, the value of love. That promises to be very interesting as well. And then we'll look at HO Corn Farm. What's that all about? Some people are interested in improving corn production in Nigeria so that we will not have a food crisis. And then, as is usual, we shall close with the Artist of the Week segment. And all I can tell you is that he is a very interesting he. So remember that you can be part of the program by following our Twitter handles, which will appear on your screen, and you can also send us you can send us emails. Please keep them short and sharp and civil, and we can read some of them out in the course of the program. So for now, grab yourself whatever it is that catches your fancy, sit back, and enjoy with us on Sunrise this lovely Saturday. Told you.
Well, we're back. Good morning. Nyota Igbe here, and it's good to have you with us.
As if they didn't know it was Nyota Igbe.
No, sometimes you need to. No, you know
so
when we
what was the
watch
traffic like coming this morning?
Oh, yeah, it was... the whole problem is not the construction. You know that thing we keep talking about,
I think I know what it
mindset
is.
change.
Yes.
Everybody wants 6 lanes in a 2-lane road. Everybody wants to get there before the other.
Well, nobody's listening, so we've said this thing a million times,
yeah,
and it's not having any effect. So let's just zip.
No. As someone says, keep talking. One day, one individual will get up and make it. Because the annoying part of it is that by the side of the road, where the traffic managers gisting away.
I saw them too.
Oh, God.
I saw them too.
It's okay. It's all right.
Now, let's get our teeth into today's matter. On Thursday, the news broke that the Supreme Court had sacked David Leon of the All Progressive Congress, APC, as governor-elect of Bayelsa State. The man had been rehearsing. This thing happened barely 24 hours to his inauguration. We saw footage of him at the stadium rehearsing for the event of Valentine's Day. Well, the court ordered that the INEC should issue a fresh certificate of return to the candidate of the party with the next highest vote, with the required constitutional spread of votes in the results of the elections, and the candidate happened to be Senator Oyediri of the People's Democratic Party. This, however, generated various political fireworks from left and right. To discuss this topic with us this morning, we have, wait for it, guys, we have 3 legal practitioners. We have Matthew Booker, Chukwuma Ezeala, and Curtis Adiba. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
All lawyers. As we say, it's raining lawyers this morning.
It's a legal morning.
And very correct. Well, I didn't say, you said it. Welcome to Sunrise, all of you.
Pleasure.
Now, we have heard all kinds of interpretations to this matter, and the APC is actually saying that they are going to
challenge.
We all had thought, Mr. Ezeala, that the Supreme Court was the last bus stop. If the Supreme Court said something, where else can you go to challenge it? And the APC is saying that they are going to challenge this ruling?
I think some of them have access to heaven.
Oh.
Because that's the next place you can challenge it. And they can as well go there.
Oh,
and see
it's
whether
only to God.
Overrule the decision of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, but you saw the protestations, and as a result of which a curfew was imposed yesterday, 3-day curfew. What were all those protests and burning of the studio and burning of the PDP secretariat? Where is all that going to get us?
No, you see, the problem we have in Nigeria is that the operators of the constitution and the system are not sincere, they are not responsible, they are not responsive to the people. And this is why you have issues that come up today and comes up the next day and continues to come up. Now, tell me, why should a political party not screen its candidates? And this judgment has been delivered today, has been delivered, saying that the man did not present certificates that apparently had his name on. The judgment has been given. A party has been asked to vacate the office, and apparently that party had the highest number of votes. Nothing will happen to that political party that fielded the wrong candidates. It has been happening since 1979 into 1999 till date. What should the state do? Shouldn't somebody be responsible for it? I mean, you have chairman of the party, you have secretary of the party, you have the electoral committee of the party that ought to have done this work. Yeah. Initially, INEC used to do it. They normally do some investigation and disqualify at that stage. And the court said, no, you cannot. And left it again. Yes, the court said, no, you cannot. And I agree with them because it had become a judicial decision. And becoming a judicial decision, the party is at liberty to decide those that are going to fly its flag. But the parties don't do it. But I think the Supreme Court should have gone further, only that they were not called upon to do that. But I think policy should make the Supreme Court, or any court, to put a fine of not less than 100 million naira on a political party that decided to mislead Nigerians without doing this. And then some of the money may be paid by the operators themselves. If you don't take drastic measure to stop things, it will continue. It's been there.
Now, Mr. Booker, this matter of it's the political party that's supposed to screen the candidates, not INEC. Should INEC do its own due diligence and find a situation such as we have, we had with the APC? What can it do?
Before now, INEC used to take the step to make statements as to the qualification or otherwise of persons presented by political parties. But political parties felt that power was being abused by INEC. And they challenged it. And the Supreme Court said you cannot do that. Once a party has presented a candidate, your duty is to have the candidate on the ballot. Qualification or disqualification will be the issue of the court. Now, before now, even the Supreme Court itself, in Honor and Okafor and the rest, the Supreme Court made the issue of screening of candidates, nomination, selection, the exclusive reserve of political parties. And the court will tell you that even the court will not interfere. Let political parties choose their candidates. The Supreme Court even made the point that political parties are like close an association. They should run their affairs. But the typical Nigerian thing, political parties were abusing that privilege left, right, and middle. And people were complaining. And the Supreme Court had to. The laws had to be amended, beginning with Section 31, to allow people, if you are dissatisfied with the outcome of the primaries, to challenge it. That was not enough. There was another window, Section 87, subsection 9, to say you must be where you participate in a primaries, and you're not satisfied with the outcome of that primaries, you can go to court to challenge the outcome of that primaries. At that point, the window was just for people. You must have participated. But there was another provision in Section 31 of the Electoral Act, which allows for anybody, any Nigerian who feels that who feels that
the primary wasn't properly.
Who may have an allegation that you have deposed to fact an affidavit that is not true. That Nigerian has a right to go to court to challenge those facts. Now, coming to the Bayelsa issue, that was the fact. The fact is, somebody deposed an affidavit. From CF001 is an affidavit. And an affidavit by its nature is a solemn declaration that should bring that comes with consequences where individuals don't tell the truth. Now, in this particular case, what you have, just like what my learned friend stated here, was an individual having different names. You have 4 certificates with 4 names.
Different names.
With 4 different names.
Can you just hold your thoughts at that point?
Yes.
We'll go on a quick break. We'll come back and pick it up from there. Please stay with us.
Thank you.
In a judgment that lasted barely 30 minutes, the Supreme Court held that from the documents submitted to INEC, the deputy governor-elect forged certificates and, in the manner of a chameleon, used different names when it suits him. Justice Eko, who identified the discrepancies in the names on the primary school leaving certificate, General Certificate of Education, GCE, First Degree, NYSC Discharge Certificate, and the Master's Degree, which bore different names, explains that Mr. Degi Eremenyo did not approach lawful authorities to correct the multiple names on the certificates. The Supreme Court, therefore, came to the conclusion that the primary school certificate obtained in 1976, GCE in 1984, First Degree in 1990, and others were products of forgery, and that the deputy governor-elect violated Section 182 of the 1999 Constitution. The court therefore voided the joint ticket of David Leon and his running mate and set aside their participation in the November Bayelsa governorship election. Justice Eko ordered that the certificate of return already issued to the governor-elect by INEC be withdrawn immediately and that a fresh one be issued to the candidate who scored the second highest number of lawful votes with geographical spread and with requisite qualification. Although lawyer to Senator Degi Eremenyo is unavailable for comments, lawyers to the PDP and Senator Diri Doye react to the judgment.
The implication is that the governor will not be sworn in tomorrow, and justice has been done. We thank Almighty God that we have justices that the world is proud of.
The Supreme Court, in its wisdom, has disqualified the candidates of APC, the governorship and deputy governorship candidates, directed that the certificate of return issued to them should be withdrawn, and a new certificate of return issued to the candidates that have the majority of lawful votes cast and have the geographical spread in the governorship election. And I believe my clients merited that.
With the judgment of the Apex Court, the governorship candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Senator Diri Doye, who scored the highest lawful votes and with wide geographical spread, is set to take over as the next governor of Bayelsa State.
Thank you for staying with us. Yes, Mr. Booker, you were talking about...
Yes, I was talking about the intervention of the courts. That initially, the Supreme Court will not even interfere in the choice of candidates of political parties. Those were the decisions on no hand or careful. Because the court felt the political parties on their own are manned by reasonable people who will do the right thing. But along the line, there were complaints.
Well, now we know otherwise, don't we?
Well, now we know. Now, along the line, there were complaints all over the place. Between 1999 and 2003 and 2007, we saw instances in which a political party will conduct primaries, have a candidate. Along the line, somebody will not want that candidate, and the candidate will be substituted overnight.
Let me just take this to Mr. Adiba. Mr. Adiba, this whole thing about political parties, yes, the Supreme Court has given them the powers, but the laws also empower INEC to monitor and, to some extent, sanction the political parties if they are not operating in accordance with the laws. Is INEC even doing that bit as it should?
INEC is doing the bit as much as they can. They supervise party they supervise party conventions. They look at their audited accounts and all that. But again, you see, you must understand that every time we have an election, the results are annulled, you have controversies, all you hear is, there's a need for us to go back and amend our laws. But what we need to amend is the attitude of the desperate political operatives in Nigeria. And on the law, anywhere in the world is as good as those who operate the law. There are no perfect laws anywhere. The British just strung together some culture and some issues. They don't even have a written constitution like we have here. and that society runs effectively. The elections are conducted without hitches and all that. Results are accepted. The winner go home. The losers will make concession speech, and you move on. Now, the problem that we have in our system is not the problem of the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, the justices of the Supreme Court cannot come into the open and defend themselves against these attacks. It is a function of the political party to ensure that the candidates they present to INEC are qualified to contest the election. But what you find in the political parties is it's the same attitude that you have in the country, where people don't want to do things the right way. I'll give you a personal experience. In 2003, I went home to run for House of Representatives election under a platform of a political party. We were called to the state capital to do the screening of candidates. Kept waiting for about 7 hours. Finally, the guys came. And what did we see? There was no screening. We were getting messages from members of the panel that we needed to see them, to give them money. Nobody looked at my documents. So once you delivered, you were simply told, okay, good luck.
The screening panel from the party.
The screening from the party. This is what I'm telling you. And this is what you find in most political parties. Do you understand that in most party primaries conducted by majority of the parties, one major issue that came out was the fact that the candidates or the aspirants disagreed with the manner and methods that were used to conduct these party primaries.
Again, what I said about the INEC and sanctions. Let me take you to Mr. Izala. INEC, with its powers to monitor, and to some extent, I mean, INEC recently deregistered some parts because they didn't meet up with certain criteria in the laws. If INEC is empowered and is seeing that these kind of cases, this is not the first case we're seeing of someone maybe being disqualified because of forged results, or as the case may be, identity situations. But is INEC not able to sanction those political parties that are causing this kind of embarrassment to the electoral process that INEC is supposed to midwife?
I think, just like my colleague said before, that INEC had such powers, it relatively abused it. You know, people will influence INEC one way or the other in those days. The Supreme Court said, no, it is a judicial function. Judicial function in that you are going to take a decision that will affect somebody's fortune, somebody's faith, a group of people's faith. They said, no, it is only the court that can do it. The implication becomes the political parties send the documents to INEC. Not that INEC cannot on its own, but before INEC can disqualify, INEC will need to go to courts to say, this is what we have said, and we think we need to disqualify this person.
So if INEC had seen this
yes.
matter, for instance, in Bayelsa, if INEC had seen this,
yes.
they would have had to go to court.
Yes, somebody will need to, yes. INEC on its own.
That of Kogi State, the last election, the SDP ticket, INEC saw it, and INEC said they were not qualified to contest that election. But Natasha Akpoti and her group went to court, and Justice Giwa of the Federal High Court in Abuja said, INEC lacks the power to disqualify the ticket of a party. Okay. That is the responsibility of the political party to submit the names of their candidates. Look, the question you ask, the problem here is INEC is a creation of Section 153 of the Constitution. The specific powers of INEC are listed out in the third schedule, paragraph 15. It does not include INEC going into the party operation, internal party operations, to see who is qualified and who is not qualified. Okay? So once a political party presents candidate to the body, they have to accept that body. And then the party live with the consequences if they made a mistake. Now, part of the problem that we have is that we have politicians going out there doing all they can to destroy our democratic institutions when it doesn't favor them as a result of their negligence or deliberate action. Because now, you know, the thinking in this country is that if you don't contest, you can't win. And even if you don't have a chance to win at all, just contest. Something might happen in your favor and you become the winner. So it's encouraging all kind of people who don't have genuine interest or chances to jump into the process. And now we're making the European Union an appellate court to the Supreme Court in Nigeria. or the US Embassy. So once you disagree with the judgment of the Supreme Court, you go to the European Union
Carry placard.
or the Embassy of the United States so they can void the judgment of the Supreme Court.
The demonstration itself.
Mr. Booker,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Booker, do you think that political parties are going to learn from this?
No,
Because this Bielsa case, it seemed from what we have read and heard that the people of Bielsa genuinely wanted a change and that they in fact voted for the APC. And this has happened. So do you think that the parties will now do more due diligence and make sure that the candidates they are presenting are well within the laws of the land, not one person with 4 different names and 4 different certificates?
Yes, I feel for the people of Bielsa State, and I also feel for the gentleman who has been disqualified as a result of the sin of another person. I feel for the people of Bielsa State because, yes, it seemed to be a popular mandate, and they are not foisted with a situation in which you have somebody which the people apparently rejected coming in to be the governor of the state. Now, there's a clear difference between what happens in a post-election regime and what happens in the pre-election matter. Now, coming to whether or not, I'll come to the post-election and pre-election matter later, coming to whether or not the parties will learn, the question you ask yourself really is Bielsa as bad as what happened in Zamfara? In Zamfara, the APC lost everything. They lost the governor, deputy governor, all House of Assembly, House of Reps, the entire Senate. So the question you now ask yourself is, this is just the governorship. There they lost everything. Now, the point as to whether or not political parties would learn is the reason why the Supreme Court should continue to apply the law, no matter how devastating the consequences
ox is gold.
Are. Because if the Supreme Court does not act this way, the level of impunity we will continue to have, will be appalling. And as I said earlier, which has also come out as part of the discussions we have had, when the Supreme Court was deciding on Ohan or Kafo and Dalhatu, the Supreme Court was of the opinion that, look, these are people who are aspiring to lead the nation. They must be reasonable, allow them to do their thing. But when it became too much, the National Assembly itself had to amend the law to allow to allow a window to say, oh, if you participate, you can go ahead and challenge. But now with the 4th alteration, initially with Section 87.9, you must be an aspirant to even challenge. That was what the Supreme Court said in Silva and INEC. But with the 4th alteration now, even another political party can look at your own political party and say, look, I'm contesting an election with this political party. I did mine right. You did not do your own right. And why did we get to this point? We got to this point because political parties themselves, since 1999 till date, have just refused to learn. Have completely refused to learn. Now, just a little history.
So they still may not learn from this.
No, they may not learn. Just a little history. Just a little history. Something happened in respect of Amechi and INEC.
Yes.
Before Amechi and INEC happened, there was the case of Ararume, yes, which went up to the Supreme Court. Now, what happened in that case was that Ararume was meant to be the candidate of the PDP. The Supreme Court pronounced him candidate of the PDP. But upon the pronunciation, Obasanjo said, PDP has no candidate.
He was expelled from the party.
He was expelled from the party. So, because Obasanjo did not want him to, because Obasanjo did not want him, the party came out and said, look, you are hereby expelled for taking us up to the Supreme Court, and PDP has no candidate. That was how Ohakim of another political party won. Now, when Amechi came to the Supreme Court, Justice Oguntade said it when he left the Supreme Court. He said when that happened, they saw that the executive had rubbished their judgment. Amechi now came to them. And Amechi and Ararume were the same kind of decision. Yes. And don't forget that before the Supreme Court decided Amechi, the Supreme Court had first of all delivered the judgment and said to the Court of Appeal said they did not understand the decision of the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, is this decision not in English? The Supreme Court now went ahead to make that pronouncement. Amechi did not even pray to be governor of Rivers State. The Supreme Court now relied on its consequential orders to ensure that its judgment is not rubbished the way the executive rubbished his judgment in Ararume and pronounced Amechi.
And the votes belong to political parties.
Yes, and pronounced Amechi the governor of the state by saying the votes belong to the political party. So all of these things have been there since 1999, and they are just getting worse by the day. So the Supreme Court will just the Supreme Court should continue to enforce the law as it is. And just like my learned friend said, they can't come out and defend their judgments. They decide cases based on the particular facts presented to them. And I tell you one thing, if you go to the Supreme Court and you see the volume of work before their lordship, you'll be shocked. You'll be shocked at the number of cases they attend to every day.
Some of
and
them
yes,
considered frivolous.
yes, and that's the point. It is only in this country that you can appeal on adjournment from the lower court to the Supreme Court.
Just to waste time.
It is not done anywhere.
Just to waste time.
It is not done
Okay,
anywhere.
Mr. Zala, Adeko Oladipo says, our case in Nigeria is a courtocracy, a phenomenon where you obtain the mandate from the court to get into elected office, and electoral reform is imminent. That brings me to the question I want to ask. We've been having these nullifications back and forth. What does he speak of our electoral process, and what can we do about it?
It simply means that the electoral process is still in a neophyte stage. It is still very low, where the wishes of the majority are no longer respected because of the manipulation of a few people. And that is what I think, like Madam said, have the parties learned their lessons? And I say the parties will never learn their lessons except the operators themselves, personally, individually, and collectively take responsibility. And how do they take responsibility? We must. If we can't do it, normally, we can have a law to say, once you did not do your work well, there will be sanctions. Monitoring and sanctions, including removal. Because what happened in the Bayelsa case, if you look at the whole results, you understand that the man got, from many parties that contested, the man got more up to about 60% of the votes. And these votes are now voided. And you now foist on Bayelsa somebody who they did not vote for. So tomorrow, if they call him for accountability, he will tell them, did you vote for me? This is what has happened. But you won't fall the Supreme Court. Because if you fall the Supreme Court, tomorrow the impunity by the political parties will continue. But I was thinking that we would have in place, whether by way of amendment of the Electoral Act or by any other way, to call the chairman, the national chairman of the APC, and the secretary, or the national chairman whose court where the ball stops. We should be able to take this step further. I think that will be the only thing that will make them to reason well.
Okay, but hold on. I'll get back to you. When you say there has to be consequences for not doing your work, for not doing your job, case in point, deregistration of political parties. Yes. And then some people are arguing that the Constitution gives room for freedom of association, and political parties are associations. So if INEC goes ahead to deregister these parties, and they did that before, and then they restored them, what happens to the question, that statement you made, if you don't do your work well, you'll be sanctioned? These parties, based on the criteria and the laws, did not do well in the elections, and so they stand deregistered according to INEC and the laws. So how does that work?
No. The law made provision on steps upon which INEC will take to deregister. And part of it is that the person did not win election in any war, you didn't win any state election.
Okay.
So INEC looked at it and said parties A, B, C, D did not meet the criteria. Therefore, they are deregistered. The law has not said if you present an incompetent candidate that your party will be deregistered. And the law will be moving too far.
Why I ask that one is because when INEC deregistered some parties earlier,
yes,
they went to court.
Yes.
And they were restored.
Yes.
And now INEC has deregistered parties again, based on that criteria, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as the case may be. But those people are also threatening, based on the case earlier settled by the court, to go back to court.
And let them go back and let them prove to court. That time was at the point, it wasn't actually issue of deregistration. It was issue of INEC also not registering some of them. Freedom of association, you can have your freedom of association. You can have your political parties there. But the point is that INEC will not field candidates from you. That is just it. INEC said, this is constitutional provision for you since you are a party that has been existing. This is the constitutional provision that you must meet before you continue to be political party to be fielded. But I think what we should have done we should have gone a step further by law to say there will be provision for independent candidacy. That will assist us so that if you have independent candidacy and the person decides to adopt a political party will continue. We must have something to do. Because where you have our ballot papers, you have 90 candidates or you have 30 candidates, it confuses the electorate.
Yeah.
It is not good for the system.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let them get to court. The Supreme Court is also a court of policy. We believe it will get to the Supreme Court. And we believe that this time the Supreme Court will say, yes, we need to do something to avoid
distracting the electorates, to also avoid the amount of money we spend to print these ballot papers on frivolous issues.
Yeah.
So it's a cut of policy, but I think we will get there.
Okay. Study, but you're going to say something.
I was going to say something. Look, first and foremost, I think it's a ridiculous stretch of the provision of the Constitution that there's freedom of association. Otherwise, channels, the workers in channels can just come together and become a political party. All community association will become political party. It is allowed. And we're going to have
The law allows it.
will we have billions of political parties in Nigeria?
Yes.
No, look, having said that, I think there are a lot of issues for concern, especially for those who do not understand how the law works and how the Supreme Court look at things. I'm not holding their breath, but I just want to speak because, like, the protests going on in Bayelsa, the people don't understand why they elected a governor and the Supreme Court imposed another person on them. The fact is that the laws are very clear. Constitution, Section 187. For a political party to be said to have failed candidates for the position of governor of a state, they must have a governorship aspirant, and they must have someone who is his deputy. All right? And Section 187, subsection 2 says, the conditions that apply to the qualification of the governor also apply to that of the deputy. So when you go to Section 182, where the conditions for disqualification are listed, one of them is if it 182 1J, if it tenders documents that are forged to the Independent Electoral Commission. So on the basis of that, though there are two people, one is at the head of the ticket and the other is supposed to be like holding his back, but they rise or fall together because the same conditions govern them. So the question is, I've had people throw all kind of questions at me. What happened in Kogi?
Exactly.
What happened in Imo? What happened in Bayelsa? The attitude of the Supreme Court, because they also ask you, Section 140, subsection 2 of the Electoral Act 2010 says, if for any reason the candidates are disqualified, who won the election are disqualified, the court or the tribunal should not declare the next person as winner of that election. Rather, they should call for a fresh election. So there is this confusion about why is the Supreme Court not resorting to that. Now, this is a technical area because you see, like he explained in Zamfara primaries and that of Rivers went ahead against court orders. So in the eye of the court, there were no primaries at all. And so APC didn't have candidates. All the votes APC got in those elections, as far as the Supreme Court is concerned, did not exist.
Okay.
UAC McFoy.
Just hold on.
You can't put something
UAC
on nothing.
McFoy. We'll go on a quick break. We'll come back to look at what reforms should be done to our electoral system, legally and socially speaking. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us.
The Government House, venue of the inauguration, was filled to capacity, with every available space taken by supporters of the People's Democratic Party, friends and family members of the new governor and his deputy.
Distinguished Senator Doye Diri.
Before long, the inauguration ceremony kicks off with the deputy governor taking his oath of office.
I, Senator Erujakbo Lawrence Obawario,
do solemnly swear
that
I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Shortly after that, it's the turn of the governor-elect, Doye Diri, to be sworn in by the Chief Judge of Bayelsa State.
I, Senator Doye Diri,
do solemnly swear
that
I will be faithful
and
bear true allegiance
to
the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
In his address to the people, the governor admonishes them to put behind the events of the past and join him in building a state everyone will be proud of.
We bring the message of hope to Bayelsa State. We bring the message of prosperity to Bayelsa State. Therefore, let us eschew bitterness and acrimony. and learn to love ourselves, whether of the same party or of different parties. Primarily, we are brothers and sisters from Bayelsa State. And our creed today is to serve you. Like the immediate past governor will say, our leader, whom God gave wisdom, that he who serveth men well serves God well. We have come to serve you. Let us work together to serve you.
All eyes are now on the new chief executive and the team he's expected to put together to run the affairs of Bayelsa State in the next 4 years.
Thank you for staying with us. Just before we look at the reforms that need to be done, and we're almost out of time, Mr. Adiba, you're going to talk about nothing upon nothing.
I was talking about the judgment in the case of USA and McFoy, where the court said you can't put something on nothing. It will collapse. Because there's nothing to stand on. Look, so what happened in Bayelsa is the Supreme Court simply looked at it and said, we apply Section 187 of the Constitution. If the ticket was tainted and had no legal backing whatsoever, we just assumed that the APC never presented candidates at all. And if they didn't, it means the 536,000 votes or so that went to the APC never existed in law. Yeah. They could have existed in fact, but in law they didn't exist. And so the Supreme Court said, we're then going to tabulate the votes. And look at the votes, valid votes. It came to, I think, about 146,000 or so. Yeah. And then when you spread them, it gives the PDP candidate a quarter in at least 2/3 of the 8 local governments in Bayelsa. Okay? So people must understand. Now, in the case of Kogi, we say, well, if there was a joint ticket between Audu and Faleke, how come Faleke did not become governor after Audu died? The election at the point was inconclusive. It was incoherent. It was not like the case of Adamawa, where Atiku and Boni Aruna had already been elected, and then Atiku was picked as vice president. So Aruna had to be sworn in, because that was a conclusive election. So there are all kinds of issues. But like I said, the Supreme Court is doing a very difficult job. They have thousands of cases waiting for them to do, and these election cases will jump from nowhere and come to their table because it's time-bound. And then they have to do, that's why you see them, they deliver a judgment, they don't give reasons for doing so, because they need time to then sit down and write their judgment. Over time. So let politicians behave, and we'll have a better process.
This matters before the courts have been over time. Different cases. I mean, you've cited some, all of you have cited certain cases that have been. Should the Supreme Court, while we're waiting for the National Assembly to look at reforming some of the electoral laws, should the Supreme Court make certain statements about, since their ruling stands as law, should the Supreme Court be expected to make certain statements as regards the electoral process based on antecedents?
But then, yes, they should. I agree. You know, you see, in the judicial system or in law, you know, you have passivity and you also have activism. Our own courts are relatively passive. But then I wouldn't say that the Supreme Court will assume the position of lawmaking. They will not be law. They can only interpret the law. Yes, in the process of interpreting the law, they can make statements that can, you know, throw up amendments in the legislation. But they cannot, while making that statement, veer into lawmaking. It's going to be a difficult thing for them. Because of the system we operate in, the three, you know, if it's in UK, for instance, where you have the parliament, you have the judiciary can actually move a step further than what our judiciary can do here, if you look at the history of law in the world. But having said that, some of the statements they have made, you know, most times they make, and sometimes they make statements and say, look, we are not the lawmakers, we will not do this, but we think this is what could be. And that is why I said, when we are having these issues coming up, the statements, just like my colleague mentioned, the issue that happened in Imo State, the case of Ararume. And then the issue that happened in Rivers, where the Supreme Court on its own imposed the governor then, Amechi. And in subsequent cases, the Supreme Court also said, no, we can no longer impose people. It is the issue of political parties, because they knew what they did was not supposed to be right. But they were trying to, they were trying to gauge the executive who has continuously taken Nigerians for a ride. So first thing is, in my view, before the laws are amended, the Supreme Court at this stage should also be looking at what are the wishes of the people. Some people said, oh, they should have ordered for fresh election. Remember that it's money you use for that fresh election. That is one. Remember there will be lives that will go in issues of that fresh election. But also, you also have to look at, was there substantial votes for that particular political party? A party that may not have up to 40% of the total votes cast. And my colleague said, yes, they are void votes. It's like, and I agree with him to a reasonable extent, it's like people that voted outside the line. Even if there are 1 million votes and only 200,000 voted within the line, that 1 million votes are off. This is exactly what has happened in this case. But what do we do to ensure that people don't vote outside the line? To ensure that the will of the people are captured at all times. And this is why the Supreme Court will go further. The Supreme Court, there's nothing wrong in the Supreme Court saying the operators of this system ought not to be members of the political party, not to talk of running the political party. It will assist us. It will make the politicians to sit up. It will make the politicians to think of the will of the people. Because much responsibility has been given to them. And if they have those responsibilities and they decide to stand on those responsibilities, what are you talking about? You have the case of the APC and their various governors in Edo and other places. You also have the same thing with PDP and other places. We need to be very careful in this country. Okay. We need to have people do the right thing.
Talking about political parties and taking note, Festus Akinboyewe seems to agree with you when he says, electoral law is workable if all politicians play by the rules. The Supreme Court judgment that declared Uzodimma and Oyediri governor of Imo and Bayelsa, respectively, should send a clear message that our politics is evolving and all political parties should take note.
That's correct. Now let me say something.
You agree, absolutely.
No, I agree. I agree. But to the extent also, the addition, I did an addendum, that we need to punish people that are doing this. So if it's for them to take note, these people they are deaf and dumb.
Okay.
That's the truth. They are deaf and dumb.
My interpretation of that, therefore, is that the deputy governor under the APC in Bayelsa should be punished for this action.
Not the deputy governor, the political party, not him.
Oh,
he was only contesting. He has brought what he has. It was for the political party to screen him, to look at this things and say, Oga, we cannot put you on our ballot. You are a bad egg on our ballot. And if the political party refuses to do that, what do? You punish the chairman, you sanction the sometimes because political is an amorphous entity. APC is an amorphous entity, just like PDP. It's somebody like in a company. You have directors of the company. When
you have the managing director.
You have the managing director. When a company has done something outside the law, because what they did was something outside the law, there can be a kind of unveiling to get at those people that have done this. Okay, without doing this, we can't get to anywhere, as it is in Nigeria.
Something on what he has just said about sanctioning political parties. Now, what other stiffer sanction would you have than a political party that has spent money to contest for election, won the election, and had seen the promised land?
On the eve of swearing in.
On the eve of swearing in, could not. You get it. Now, I understand your position to mean that political parties should do better. Coming to the issue of sanction, this individual we're talking about.
Oh, by the way, who should do the sanctioning? INEC or the Supreme Court?
I'm coming to that. Now, the individual we're talking about, who is the deputy governor-elect, was in the Senate.
Former.
He's still in the Senate.
Yeah, he's still in the Senate.
Okay.
He won election into the Senate on the platform of the PDP. They came to APC and contested for deputy gubernatorial.
I even live in Senate.
Yeah. So somebody, I mean, offline, somebody said something that perhaps he was within the family that knew everything about him. When he left that family for another family, they decided to use what they know about him against him. But another thing is really which is very serious, and we really need to understand is is that the people, the wish of the people must always be respected. When you have this kind of situations that the people's mandate apparently is not there. Democracy, we have always said, is usually is usually majority rule. But in actual fact, the democracies that we practice all over the world is the rule of the majority that participated. That is it. If you have in Nigeria we're over
Technical participation.
Yes. In Nigeria we are over 100 over 120 million. Those who participated in the last election were less than 30 million. So it is the wish of the 30 million that participated. Now, on the issue of talking about the role that the Supreme Court has continued to play, the disciplinary role, because that is what the Supreme Court is doing now, holding the big stick. If you have not done the right thing, they will ensure that they bring you to line. That is exactly what is happening. So for reforms, I would think that one of the major reforms that we should have is to ensure that all pre-election matters are determined one way or the other before even elections are conducted. Because post-election matters, like to draw a difference between what happened in Imo and what happened in Bayelsa. What happened in Bayelsa is strictly an issue, pre-election, that has to do with whether or not primaries were conducted by a political party properly. In that case, it has been discovered that something went wrong. So the party lost out completely, and the people who went out in the general election have ended up being deceived. For a post-election matter like what happened in Imo State, you can't really stop that because it is part of the electoral system. Because somebody is coming to say, well, I participated in this election. The person you declared is not actually the choice of the people. So I am now coming to court to allow the court to determine who the right choice of the people is by saying I scored the majority of lawful vote. The other person did not score. So the reforms that we should actually target would be to say all pre-election matters should have, though as it is now, just like what we have mentioned, you must come to court within 14 days of the occurrence. The court must determine within 180 days. Court of Appeal must determine within 60 days. Supreme Court must determine within 60 days. But I think we should do more to allow political parties to have a longer, to have a period of nomination over and above 120 days, and have electoral matters determined, pre-election matters determined before and the people go into election, because the people have no choice in the primaries.
We need to bring in our viewers here, okay? Because we're almost out of time. Someone asked a question. The Supreme Court said, based on the judgment, that he forged his document. This guy, Niger Fora, says the Supreme Court's judgment is a calamity against the provisions of the law. Conflicting information is not the same as false information. Having different names in a certificate does not connote forgery. Do you agree?
Well, that's his own. Look, you see, the fact is, it's a matter of perspective and a matter of evidence. His perspective is based on what is being reported by the news outlets. He has not read the judgment to see the weight of evidence that was before the Supreme Court. You know, like I said this, look, you can have the fastest relay team in the world, and everybody knows they have the best time, and it's sure for them to win. But if you have somebody who has used drugs among the athletes, the team will be disqualified. It's not because they didn't win the race. They won the race, but somebody somewhere they did something that was illegal and against the rules. You see, the Supreme Court justices have no interest in who becomes the governor. It's not going to make them bigger, taller. And the fact is that they are dispensing justice based on the rules that they see. And don't forget something, that if the politicians will play by the rules, there will be no need for us to have all the cases that we have.
Should there have been a consequential judgment to say the guy should be arrested?
Well, look, the Supreme Court does not need to trigger that. The police should understand. That's under Section 4 of the Police Act. They know it's their responsibility. But here is the point for me, in all this. Let's look at a neighboring country, Ghana. They hold their elections. Do you hear about cases going to court and staying there? All the participants want to be declared the winner. And it is because they just feel that you could go to the court. We've even had cases about people saying, no, they bribed the judges. They did all kind of... Look, the fact is that if we play by the rules, fewer cases will go to court. You know, and
they're making you guys rich. They're making you guys rich. So it's okay.
No, but it's
to be on the streets.
No, but just like he mentioned in Ghana.
It's better to go to court than to be on the streets.
I participated in Ghana election by way of observing the election as an observer in Ghana. When you get to Ghana, you see the quality of electorates that you have. You see the quality of people who are looking at what you're doing. You see the quality of the political parties. You see how the political parties are active in what they are doing. But when you come down here, you see it completely diverse. I was thinking that the demonstration should be against the political parties that are wrong.
But the people won't understand that.
All right, let me bring in here, Mr. Booker. Enzo also says, amend the Electoral Act 1 million pieces. If we don't amend our electoral minds, nothing will work.
And I agree with him 100%.
He says the average politician is looking for ways to manipulate the system.
No, that's correct. In fact, I wanted to even just that's 100% correct. And I'll say this: let me just go back a little bit to the question that was asked on the judgment. If you read the judgment, I've read the judgment from the beginning to the end. The Supreme Court did not even say it was forgery. Clearly, what the Supreme Court said is that you say your name is Mr. X. Yes. The document you have presented shows that you are Mr. Y. Z and
A and C.
That's just the point. And it comes down to, what does the law say? The law is the fact. If you depose to facts which themselves are not true, it is a ground for disqualification.
They are therefore not facts.
Yes, and the Supreme Court has stated in the case of Joe Aggie versus PDP that it is not just any kind of deposition. Because in that case, the Supreme Court tried to draw a distinction between what happened in, a distinction between what happened in the August case, where it has to do with the Abia's case, which has to do with tax. That the Supreme Court said it's not just any kind of information, but information that boosts your qualification to contest for election, age, education, and all of that. Because yes,
I was actually saying, is it the same person that have these certificates that is presented?
That's the point. So the point for me, the point for me really,
the spotlight should also be thrown onto the documents he used to enter as a senator.
Yes. So the point for me, sir, on that judgment.
Let me just quickly flip, because we're running against time here. Okay. So to you, Suleiman Yahya says, I think Nigeria is getting close to its highest stage of democratic confusion. Upon reaching that stage, Nigeria would have no choice than to begin to take a conscious step to do the right thing.
And I think to some extent I agree with him, because you see, when you follow the rules, you have less problems. Look, I was just telling you guys when we were on break that I live in a small estate where we try to conduct election. And total registered voters, less than 1,300. We couldn't hold the election. We couldn't, because when we applied the rules, a lot of people were disqualified. And some people threatened to go to court to prevent holding an election in an estate. That is how desperate people are in winning in this country.
And that's the way they are not paid to be part of the exco.
That's what I'm saying. So then you take it to the national level,
There's where something in it,
where they are overpaid to do the job.
Oh.
No, I don't know.
There must be.
But there's something in the estate governance.
The point I'm making is that, we keep having cases coming out of our elections. Pre, post-election matters.
Okay.
And no matter what you do.
I'm told we have to go.
We've got to go.
Mr. Izala, you will close this thing, but I'll read this and then you close with diaspora voting. What should be done about diaspora voting? The Supreme Court judgment is a mockery of, Doyin Kasumu says, Supreme Court is a mockery of the law which refers to forgery or false and not conflicting information. My WASC reads Shamsuddin Kasumu. My Unilag certificate reads Shamsuddin Olasukomi Kasumu. My MBA reads Shamsuddin Adedoyin Kasumu. ICANN certificate, same.
But Shamsuddin Kasumu is in all three names.
But there are two names that are there.
Constant.
You understand? Constant.
Yes.
Maybe he has included a third name.
Yes.
That one, somebody looking at it, even you, using just your mind without a legal mind, they say, oh, maybe there are issues. But when you have 5 different names, one will have H, one will have A, one will have a different thing, certainly.
Diaspora voting, what should be done about diaspora voting?
Diaspora voting, I think we should get to that place. We should amend our laws. It's a question of technology. technology is now everywhere, very cheap for us. We should be able to allow our brothers, because sometimes they have more information than some of the people that are here. We must allow it.
Refuse to use internally
We have not gotten
this same technology,
right. We are
which
talking
you
about
know
diaspora
will give you the
voting,
correct
where you don't even know where
results,
people are located
but
to
which
vote.
you have refused to use.
And that, yes, but if we now have diaspora voting,
We'll be forced to
it will
use
have
technology.
inside
But I think there's
using
something
the
we do in the
technology.
NBA.
We
There's
got
something
to
we do in
go.
the NBA.
MBA's
gotta
case is
go.
still in court. MBA's case is still in court.
We gotta
Don't
go.
cite
Thank
MBA's
you
case.
very much, gentlemen.
We are still in court.
We have been looking at the Bielsa issue, well, electoral matters, and we were chatting with Mr. Matthew Booker, thank you, Mr. Chukuma Ezeala, and Mr. Curtis Adigba, all legal practitioners. Thank you all very much for coming to shed more light on this. At least many of us understand this thing a bit more, because we were wondering, why did the Supreme Court do what it did? Now we understand it better. Thank you very much. Sunrise will be back in 2 Shakes of a Lamb's Tail. Stay with us.